Todos no nosso webinar sobre e-Competence. Nossa sessão será gravada e todos receberão na próxima semana um link para assistir ao vídeo na íntegra. Pedimos que todos guardem suas perguntas, preferencialmente para o final, para não interrompermos a gravação. Utilizem a ferramenta do hands-on no chat para se comunicar com o palestrante e com a equipe do Brasil. E mantenham o microfone desligado para evitar interferências. Reforçamos que todas as apresentações realizadas em 2012 e 2013 por nossos convidados internacionais e nacionais sobre os mais diversos temas relacionados ao nosso portfólio estão disponíveis no nosso canal do YouTube. Nessa edição, temos um convidado especial. Gostaria de dar as boas-vindas ao Martin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Milena Andrade, and on behalf of Academia Brazil, I'd like to welcome and thank you all to be here with us today for our webinar about e-Competence. Just some reminders, our session will be recorded and everyone will receive the link next week to watch the video. We kindly ask you to keep your questions to the end of the presentation. Use the hands-on tool to communicate with the lecturer and staff of Ict Brazil. And please, keep the microphone off to avoid interference. All webinars promoted by Ict Brazil in 2012 and 2013 are available in our YouTube channel. In this edition, we have a special guest from Ict Netherlands. I invite Martin Derzetin to share his knowledge with us. Martin?
Yeah, thank you all. Good morning. I cannot see my presentation at the moment. This is just to check if everybody can hear me well. I take it that everything can hear me well. I'll just wait one more second because I do not have my own presentation at the screen at the moment. Now I have. Okay, thank you for that. Good morning once more to all. I indeed hope you can hear me well. As an introduction, I'm going to present to you a presentation that I also presented earlier this week on several occasions. And I'm glad that I also have the opportunity to have this seminar today in order to inform all of you who will not be able to either be present at the events I presented or that we were not able to meet in person. I will go through this presentation as quickly as possible, and indeed questions can be asked at the end of the presentation. So please bear with me and we will get to the questions later on. If there are really important questions that you think need to be asked during the presentation, then please chat them and hopefully somebody can help me to intervene. Okay, what are we going to discuss this morning? This is a small overview of the agenda. I will first go into the situation in which we live today before explaining you something about the e-Competence framework. After the insights, the framework, for your information, is something in which Exin has been a partner from the very beginning, and as a result of this, also our Exin e-Competence assessment based on this framework is basically a continuing development and realization of specific products and solutions based on this framework. The presentation that I have for you today is, of course, for ICT professionals, and we will talk about the ICT professional market. As you all know, ICT has changed our lives. ICT is all around us in private life and in business life, and it is something that we cannot imagine without. The information you see here on the top right, in the top right corner of the slide, is an example of a white paper that Exin wrote already at the end of 2011 where it is very clear that, of course, management information has become more complex and is recognized as the key success factor, both for individuals and organizations. And ICT professionalism is rising with new roles, new responsibilities, and new skill sets. And this was, as we called it at that time, the IM wave, or the information management wave. And as you, of course, all know, the people factor increasingly makes a difference in business operations. And the future, of course, also lies in developing individuals, providing them with the skills and the mindsets or attitudes, as I will also explain later on in the presentation. So this is not something new. It's been there for quite a while, and we just have some tools now to also help us in achieving the goals we set. However, before going into that, just some additional information as to the current situation that we live in. And this is a global situation. As you know, ICT, it has no boundaries, neither within a country or within a company. This is really a global picture. The first thing that I wrote down here is a little bit of a paradox, because on one hand we have growing unemployment, but on the other hand we have an excess demand for specific IT skills. In my presentation you might see IT and ICT. I basically mean the same as translated in Portuguese. That would be TI or TIC. It's all the same. So we see this paradox, which is an interesting observation. What we also observe is that a decreasing number of ICT graduates are in place since 2005. So since 2005, less people leave school or university with an ICT diploma. However, the expectation is that especially the e-skills demand will have an excess demand in 2015. So this is growing rapidly, and on one hand, and on the other hand, we will not have the right people with the right skills in the market. Something else that also does not help to sometimes attract people to our market is the professional image. Sometimes the image of the professional is somebody who is not aligned to reality. Some people call it nerds, but that is something that also is in many cases also a problem for going forward. Something else is what we mentioned here as the Ict Certification Jungle, which basically we mean that in order to improve your career and to make the next steps and to start new training, it is sometimes difficult to choose which training that should be, because there are so many trainings and certificates out there that it is hard to choose which one is the best and which one has the right quality and which one is really helping you going further as addressing the right qualities and the right competences, so you will. So this is also something that we need to address, and it is also where the competence framework that I will discuss later on is supporting. The last thing on this slide is what we call the stereotyped image of the IT profession. Not the professional itself, but the profession is that sometimes people think that there is a lack of orientation or navigation or guidance, which in some cases is maybe not the case, but to the outside world, it sometimes is. Just a short introduction on the framework. The framework is meant to be a common language. So what do we mean with that? The e-Competence framework, the E stands for Europe, but this is already no longer a European competence framework, because the competence framework is of interest to many also out of Europe, as we have seen in our earlier talks with many people and companies around the globe. There is really also, of course, globally, this need to speak a common language so that we all understand what we mean if we talk about resumes, job positions, people, etc. That's also the reason why many stakeholders joined to work on the competence framework. This work started as early as in 2005, and we as Action have also been one of the first to participate in this work. Furthermore, the framework is now on its way to also become a standard, a norm in Europe. It will take a few years, but the first steps have been made. And in general, the framework provides a basis for definition and transparency of what the IT profession is, and that is an important step. And it is the potential to build the foundation for services, tools, etc. And the e-competence assessment that I will talk about later on is exactly an example of one of those, and especially also a very important one. But we will get to that later. A short word about Action before I move forward further. Of course, you know Action as a company, and I will also explain that later on who we are for those who do not really know in detail, and where we stand and what our roadmap is for the coming years, and what kind of new products we have to offer as of the 1st of January. In the changing ICT world and in the changing world with regards to roles and competences, we of course have today also very much a role-based program. That will also remain. It's also of importance because sometimes it is important to have this because this then is focusing on what brings and helps you further, basically the day after you've done the course in your current career. But this is much more role-based, whereas e-competence is more personally based for you as an IT professional. Who we are and where we are definitely a global company. We've been in the business for 30 years, and we've always been there to support the ICT professional and the ICT market. Very much an independent certification institute, and as you know, we do the accreditation and certification of programs for professionals, and we are also incorporating the ECF in our product offering. But what's most important, we are independent, and that's also why we have started 30 years ago. And that means that we are not training providers ourselves, but that we focus on the verification and validation of both the professionals and the ones training the professionals. So that's how we sit in this ecosystem. About our products, this is an example. We have a broad range of products and services. We're also following the IT business process of plan, build, run, enable, and manage. We've been the co-founder of Untitled, for instance, to mention just one of the important exams that we offer to the market. As I said earlier, there will be some changes as of 2014, because we will also add the best management practice of Axelos, which is a joint venture that the Cabinet Office has formed recently. I will show you more of this in the next slide. This is an example of what the best management practice portfolio consists of, and in the following slide you basically see this added to our product portfolio, where you see that especially in the area of management, but also in project management, we, as a fact, due to the fact that we add this business management portfolio, add some substantial products. Okay, that being said about Action, okay, I have one more slide here that I did not have in my other presentation. As I already explained, why EXIN, we are seen as an independent and reliable exam institute. We have innovative approach towards program development. We have extremely good support on a global scale, and we very much are a one-stop shop where you as an ICT professional, or you providing trainings to ICT professionals, can really receive all the input and support that you need in order to make things happen. Okay, well, that was about EXIN. Now I will first go into the e-Competence framework a little bit deeper. The most important thing is that, as I said earlier on, we started already in 2005 with this work. Basically, there was and is a SEN workshop on IT skills that was asked by the European Commission to start doing this work. And as said, it was also done with many contributors from the market. Today, we have a version 2.0 of the e-Competence framework. And later this year, we will have the version 3, which means that it is a lively framework. It is not, in that sense, a framework that sits out there and doesn't change. As ICT, our community, our business changes rapidly. Also, the framework will follow that, but not on a daily basis, but more on a yearly basis. So it is also towards the future, future-proof, so that it will really follow the market closely there. The contributors in Europe, but also overseas, come from many areas. Of course, IT and HR management are very important parts, because if we talk about people, if we talk about competences, this is exactly the two main categories of management that are important to be aware of this and to also contribute to this. Furthermore, as I also explained a little bit earlier, it is important that also the education part is following very closely what's going on in the world, in order to make sure that they can also support you as an ICT professional and the ICT professional market by bringing exactly that what you need, and also the framework and trainings based on e-competences can help a lot there. So that's also why they joined courses and are working on this together with many companies and organizations. And of course, for policymakers, it is interesting to, based on real facts, see exactly what these gaps are in the market, where they are, and how they can be solved based on real facts. This is basically building on a multiple user experience. So what ensures this common ICT language? It is by now a Europe-wide working tool. That was the idea, but by now, of course, also potentially a global-wide working tool for many. And as I described earlier, I will go into that a little bit more detail now with regards to the group that we address, or that this addresses. First, of course, the ICT practitioners and managers, because it gives a clear guidelines for their competence, position, and development. It is important, of course, if you want to move forward, if you want to contribute somewhere, that you know exactly where you stand, and that is important for you as an IT professional, but also for the people managing you. HR, around the same thing. It gives inputs to anticipate, plan, and develop competence needs based on facts. If people know exactly where you stand, it is also possible to look towards the future to see where you want to be and how that can be accomplished by looking where you are today and where you have come from. For the educational market, it is important because it enables them to plan effectively so that they can design their IT or ICT curricula in the best possible way based on demands or expected demands rather than providing trainings that have always been there but are in some cases maybe far away from what is needed at the moment. Because as you know, the market is changing rapidly and going into an education that takes 6 years, it is probably difficult to teach you all the details and all the information that you need 6 years down the road, because in the meantime, the market has changed rapidly. So also there's quite a challenge for the education and training providers to come up with something that suits our needs better and is closer to the market. And again, providing the common language will make it easier for policymakers and market research. And all in all, this leads to the ability to develop, manage, and plan ICT practitioners and managers' competencies that will be needed in a long-term perspective. But in order to reach that, it needs to be started and worked upon already today. This one I will explain just quickly because I will come back to that later as well. The framework talks about competences. Of course, competences and also the word assessment that I used earlier are been mentioned in many cases. So it is good to realize and understand what the ECF framework means when they talk about competences. As written here, they say it's a demonstrated ability to apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes for achieving observable results. I will go to that later on as well, as I said, but this is basically looking at where you stand today based on the results you can show of the past, and it doesn't say much today about your potential, but more where you are. Furthermore, of course, the framework is not a framework in itself, completely loose from the world around us or reality. The framework was also very much aligned with everything that already exists in order to make it sustainable also in the longer term, and to really be part of the ecosystem that is needed in order to move things forward. This is then the slide where you see a big overview of what this framework is. The framework is built up in 4 dimensions, and maybe the details on this slide are not extremely clear, but again, 5 competence areas in the dimension plan, build, run, enable, manage, and then you have today 36 competences. That is version 2. There will be a version 3 available at the end of this year, and then we will have 40 competences. This is an example of the fact that this is a lively framework, where based on also input from the market, the framework can be adapted and changed. Where do these extra 4 competences, for instance, come from? It can be an extra competence, but it can also be that competences are split up because the market says, well, this competence needs to be split up because it is very different, or it has different parts. And the competences range from testing or ICT quality strategy development, but also purchasing, channel management, and sales management. Things you maybe less expect in an ICT environment are part of these competences. And that, of course, fits very well in the ever-changing world that we live in, where also ICT becomes more part of business, and also those are more and more aligned, or basically in some cases there is even not any difference or distance anymore between the two, and they just are part of existing teams. Per competences, there are proficiency levels. So this is ranging from 1 to 5 within ECF. For some competences, there are proficiency levels that do not exist, which exist for others, and that has to do with the different competences. What it doesn't say is something about quality of you or of the competence. It just says that a certain competence is available at a certain level, yes or no. So it's not a quality measurement system, but a measurement system it is indeed, in order to make sure that you can use this as a language across borders, because you really speak the same language. Then the fourth dimension is a dimension where per competences there are a few examples mentioned of this knowledge. I will show that in a slide later on. What I first want to do is show you one more slide on the proficiency levels, basically dimension 3. This is, in a nutshell, a difference between level 1 to 5, where level 1 is more or less a stable environment where people are responsible for their own actions. For instance, the service desk employee, and level 5, that could be the CAO, where you are in a very complex and unpredictable environment, where you are very much accountable for your deeds and where you are shaping the future. This is also the beauty of this framework, that it really is a solution for everybody in ICT, from service desk to CIO. There are other frameworks out there, but they are either more complicated or only addressing a part of the ICT population. And the e-Competence framework is really building something for the entire community. And behind that, you see an example of, or another example of how the framework and the levels compare to existing learning results, ranging from a doctoral degree to foundation degree, diploma of higher education, etc., etc. Another interesting thing that is part of ECF that can help us achieve this common language is that it has been written down in more detail than you will see on this slide, that if you have several competences at a certain level, there is also the possibility to receive a degree or a European title. And later on you will see that in the work we do and the assessments we create, we not only give out certificates per competence, but if a person is entitled to receiving several certificates, which together would form a title, that also a fourth or fifth certificate is handed out with this European title. And that's just a nice to have in this system as well, in order to be able to show who you are and also where you are. This, as an example, is basically what the e-Competence framework gives you. This is basically the outcome of very elaborate work that took a long time between all the stakeholders. And later on in my presentation, there will also be a link where this information can be found. There is even also a little booklet describing all this. And of course, there are also websites where this information can be downloaded. But what we see here is also dimension 4, where you see some examples of this knowledge and also of skills. Another thing that we do not see here, but that you will see later on in the presentation, is soft skills. e-Competence framework says that soft skills are embedded. We, however, and I'll show that later, I think that is not enough to show and to measure, because that's exactly what we do from here. it is written in dimension for a few examples, but what does it mean in real life, and how are you going to measure this in order to see if a competence is there and at what level. So that is basically where we will pick up and go forward towards the e-competence assessment. But before going to that, I think there's two more slides on our involvement in Europe and why we are doing this. Two projects that are interesting to mention here is the first one that you see here. It's about mapping certifications of training providers. As I said earlier, training providers and training is of course of the utmost importance for you as an ICT professional, but it's also very important to know how such a training equals to ECF. So we have a project in which we cooperated in Europe. There's also a website mentioned on this page that you can go to for all this information, where we basically map these trainings. What does it mean? We look at the training and we say this training, this course has these competences at that level inside the training, so that we know on a skills level what we can expect a person should have once you have followed the training. On the other hand, for a professional, it's also interesting to see what kind of training is addressing which competences, that if you choose to move forward and you need certain competences at certain levels, you can see what kind of trainings are important for you or interesting for you. And at the same time, training providers can see if their trainings are up to par or not good enough. And if maybe the demand says, I don't want to complete training, but just a part of it, to really build something that is more a modular approach around what they do. So that is the training provider side and ECF for that part of the business. Another part is the self-assessment tool that was developed already in Europe. For IT practitioners, it was something to profile their skills in order to be able to find the next step. It is a self-assessment tool, so it is self-assessment. There is no third party or assessor involved, but it gives you an idea of where you stand if you want to go to the next step. For students and professionals alike, it's also to profile and compare their skills, also to the skills in demand. HR managers, of course, can use profiles for vacant job positions and see what the vacant skills are. And employment agencies can, of course, use it for matching. So comparing the profile of a candidate with vacancies. What I think is also important to mention here, if I did not mention it already before in my presentation, is that the ECF is looking at competences, and that is something completely different than job roles or job names. However, Sam has also provided an example solution of 23 job roles in order to also link the existing world and the e-competence world to say, okay, what could this mean? For example, if we build around 23 professions, an example. And that's basically what every company, of course, has to do for itself as well, is to link competences to jobs, so that you know exactly in what kind of job, what kind of competences and what level is required, so that you ask something in the market, you help the ICT practitioner to say, okay, that's exactly what I have, and I have proof of that by means of, for instance, an excellent e-competence assessment. Before going into this competence assessment, once more the definition. It's around knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And as you can see in this slide, on the top right, that we have here mentioned, for instance, e-Competence consists of knowledge, skills, and attitude. And we know from a fact, from our work, that somebody can have up to 5 competences. Because what we do? We look at the observable result, which basically mean that you have to be able to prove where you are today, and that means it's not something that is a potential capability of you with regards to a competence, but more what you have achieved already. And we do that in a transparent and objective manner, so that it is easy to compare profiles more easily. What does it bring you? These observable results lead to an assessment process, and the outcome of this assessment process is the recognition, and this tells you something about your proficiency level with regards to what you have achieved today. So again, not what you potentially could do, but showing what you have achieved, where you stand today, and build from there. What does that look like in a process? This means that if you go in the left corner, that as a professional, you can register through the self-assessment. And again, this is a self-assessment that Action built for the purpose of this process. And it is built in such a way that you can, when you fill out your competences, you see exactly what is needed in this competence in order to have this competence, and at what level you need what, which basically means you will not come out with a self-assessment that says you have the capability of 20 or 15 or 30 competences. No, you will see in this process that you will only have a handful maximum of competences that you can really show and prove. When the self-assessment is finished, the registration starts. You deliver all the information that is needed for us in order to see where you stand, and that is work that you have done, your CV, plans you have been written, things you have been accomplished, your diplomas, etc., etc. We will check if everything's there, but what's also important, we will verify everything. So we will look at references, we look at your education, everything you provide us will be checked and proven. And furthermore, we will also ask you to follow a soft skill assessment, and this soft skill assessment is something that we as Action developed by ourselves with many respondents in order to calibrate this also for the ICT professionals. As said earlier, the ECF framework says that the soft skills are embedded. That was not enough for us. We really went a long way with external companies to really build a soft skill assessment for ICT professionals in order to also have an extra check on where you are, because the soft skill assessment together with your with the information you deliver, there usually is a direct link between the two. If we see at the soft skill, we have certain expectations to what you can do or how you act, etc. This is probably also seen in the work you have done and the accomplishments you have achieved. So there's an interesting link there. Now all this information is collected over time, and the end of this process, that there will be an assessment by an expert, which is an interview of an hour or an hour and a half, depending on how many competences and what needs to be asked and checked and proved. The result, of course, is something that will be fed back to the professional and will be put in a database for later referral. And that is basically the e-Competence assessment, which really measures what the e-Competence framework delivers. And in order to make it workable, we thought it was a good idea to have such a measurable tool so that you can really verify and validate where you are based on this framework, and that can then be used for all. Yeah, I think that's enough for now. So what leads, where does this lead to? It can be read here that of course this leads to more transparency of competences of ICT professionals. If you have done self-assessment or an assessment, you employer, HR, know exactly what kind of competencies you have and at what level, and you can start working with that. It is also a way to better understand the gap between existing and desired skills. As mentioned before, there are many skills ranging from testing to purchasing and from sales to development. So there's an interesting mix of skills that never before have been measured in such a way and in such a combination. Of course, you as a member of a team and member of an organization are important, but what's also important is that the composition of these teams and the composition of organizations is being built up in such a way that you help each other move forward rather than have too much of the same, and that might block you in your progress. Also mentioned focused training. It will also help training providers based on the needs of the market to better react to that and to come with programs that are better tuned to the demand. It also gives you an opportunity to further education, permanent education. It will therefore more professionalize the IT profession and the IT market, and this ultimately can go to growth, can lead to growth, where the problems that we have today of projects that take too long, projects that do not deliver what needs to be delivered, etc., can also be something of the past by providing the right team. Of course, there's also other important matters that needs to be looked upon, but from a personal point of view, from a workforce point of view, the e-competence assessment is a very important step forward. I'm sure that by now there are many questions, and there are also many things that might be unclear. In order to read through some of the information, this is the website where you could go to. There is also information in English, and there is some information for the professional, some information for companies, information on the e-competence assessment, information on the environment around about ECF, which can also be seen here. I go back. There is information on e-competence assessment, on ECF, on Exin, news, facts, all around this. What, however, needs to be kept in mind today is that this is growing. We have developed and elaborated many of the competences already, have also already started with assessments. We've done many pilots in the past, but today we are delivering the product as such. Today only in the Netherlands, because we needed to start somewhere and we started close to home. But as said earlier, there is a lot of interest also outside of Europe, and also within Europe there are certain countries that are early adopters, where others may be laggards. We are trying to set up the ecosystem also again with partners in such a way that we can grow this rapidly, hopefully. And as said, this is of course something that is not just a PowerPoint showing all things that we can do or could do. As said earlier, we worked on this since 2005. The last 2 years we have worked on the competence assessment. And this is an example of where we stand today. Earlier this month, we have really delivered the first competence assessment certificates in the Action office in the Netherlands at the headquarters, together with our CEO. The first people received their certificates, and of course that is a good step forward, and we are expanding on this also on a wider scale, and that is basically today the end of my presentation. So if there's any questions, then I would like to hear them, because it's been a long talk.
Sessão de perguntas abertas. Por favor, não fiquem tímidos. Podem usar a ferramenta do chat ou hands-on e a gente tira o mute de vocês.
Any questions?
Enquanto vocês pensam nas perguntas, deixa eu deixar uma informação para vocês. Junto com o link dessa apresentação, eu vou pedir também que seja encaminhado um link para que vocês possam ter acesso a um folder que, inclusive, nós distribuímos nos eventos que o Martin participou essa semana a respeito do ECS, para dar um pouco mais de ideia para vocês com relação à estrutura. Não saiam, que nós vamos fazer o sorteio dos 2 pocket guides, mas precisamos de perguntas. Ok, como não conseguimos receber nenhuma pergunta no momento, talvez vocês queiram pensar um pouquinho. Primeira pergunta, Martin, aparecendo. Martin, they are asking if there is any potential date to translate the material into Portuguese.
Thanks for that question. There are a few languages in which ECF is already translated, that you can also see if you go to the links on the website that I showed earlier. We have no Portuguese translation today. However, we also have good contacts here in Brazil with a company that did some of the translations already themselves, and maybe working together with them, we might come up with a solution in Portuguese in the near future. But I cannot tell what we have and by when we have it, and in what countries. That very much depends, of course, also on the feedback that we get from markets, and especially also parties in this market that maybe can contribute to this success and can support our endeavors in that area.
Mais alguma pergunta no momento? Ok. Eu vou fazer o encerramento e, na sequência, a gente faz o sorteio dos Pocket Guides, ok? Gostaria de agradecer a participação de todos. Como eu falei no início, a gente tem organizado, através do Ict Brasil, uma série de palestras. Normalmente, a gente tem uma média de 2 por mês. Estamos encerrando o ano de 2013 com essa apresentação do marketing. Vou mandar para vocês também o link do canal do YouTube para que vocês possam verificar se outros temas que foram discutidos ao longo aí de 2012 e 2013 possam interessar e que vocês possam assistir novamente esses materiais. De qualquer forma, fica aqui os nossos agradecimentos pelo tempo. O contato do Márcio e o meu estão na tela, então, caso vocês tenham posteriormente dúvidas, depois de rever a apresentação, se vocês quiserem se comunicar novamente, por favor, fiquem à vontade. Eu gostaria que o Márcio fizesse um agradecimento final para que a gente possa fazer o sorteio e encerrar a sessão. Martin, this is your time to say something to close the session.
Okay, I was on mute. Okay, thank you all for participating. I know this is a very, very complicated topic and subject where a lot needs to be understood and learned in order to see what the opportunities are. It was my pleasure to have the opportunity to at least give you a little bit of an insight here. And maybe not today or the day after tomorrow, but in the near future we will meet in order to see how we can also bring this forward in the Brazilian market. If there's any questions, as being said by Milena, then please contact her or contact her first. And once again, thanks for your listening ears, and see you soon, maybe somewhere. Cheers. Goodbye.
Ok. Eu vou fazer aqui vai ser um sorteio extremamente aleatório. Eu vou escolher aqui uma pessoa. Luciana Freire, que está aqui online. Você pode, por favor, Luciana, escrever um número no chat de 1 a 20. Alguém gostaria de sugerir um número de 1 a 20 rapidinho aqui pelo chat? Ok, chegou o número 20 aqui, então vamos lá. Florisvaldo Júnior, conectado ainda. Eu vou pedir, por favor, que você mande um e-mail com seus dados completos de endereço para que a gente possa enviar esse material para você. Mais alguém gostaria de sugerir um número? Chegou o número 8. Então, vamos ver aqui na sequência. Marcelo Salatani. Mesmo pedido, Marcelo, por favor, envie um e-mail para a gente com seus dados completos de endereço para que a gente possa mandar o Pocket Guide. Então, encerrando a nossa sessão, obrigada a todos e espero revê-los em breve nas edições de 2014. Obrigada.